Hey everybody. Uh Wanted to touch on a subject of, what to keep in a welding kit or welding truck. Like something that, you know, every welder should be doing, but I don't see it from a lot of welding trucks. It's something that I learned at a very young age, welding with my dad, and then it was reaffirmed welding in the oil field. Uh, but then, I see all these big, like, name brand welding guys on all these different YouTube channels, and it's always the same thing of, they'll they'll cut or recut an entire section of something before they fill. And what do I mean by fill? I mean using this or this to do this. And you get you get rods, you get steel rods, mild steel rods, you get mild steel uh, flat rods. They're You can get them like half-inch wide by eighth-inch thick. You can get them inch wide, and it's like you get them in like 12-inch, 14-inch, 24-inch, all the way up to like 72 inches long. And what you do is you keep, if you've got minimal space, you keep like 6 of each, 48 inches long, on hand on your truck. That way you can stack them and backfill large gaps and not have to recut an entire length of something to fix a mistake, or if you blast through, burn through, melt through a section, you can use this filler as a backing so that when you weld over it and recreate that steel section, it is 10 times stronger than just the welded steel that you would have had there. I mean, you're creating a pathway. Yes, you can use spoons as a backer and build up a puddle and then break off the spoon, and because it's a dissimilar metal, so it won't melt or bond to the steel because it's made out of copper, so it won't combine into one puddle of shit. They're dissimilar, they don't weld, so you can use those. But in a lot of cases, if you have square tube, round tubes, stuff like that, you can't get the spoon behind it because it's already a sealed end. So a filler can be used, and you lay it in and weld over the top of it. If you have to bridge a gap, put a rod on one side, weld it, cut it off, heat it off. I mean, usually if you get down to the end, you keep the arc going a little bit longer, and you pull away the leftover, what you're holding, pull that away, and you're left with a good bead there. And then you start again at the top, place the rod back in next to it, and you work your way down. You're just backfilling all this extra stuff, and it fills that gap. I don't see this with a ton of newer welders and people, on YouTube, and they're like 20s, 30s, but they don't do this. And it's like they're learning this stuff in a welding school that isn't teaching them this. I mean, you got somebody that's going to the college, $30,000, $40,000 to go to welding school. And the people teaching used to be in the school, and now they're teaching the next batch. And it's like, you are skipping out on like 10 generations of welding knowledge by just doing, schooling. If you go to the oil fields, and you go and do any of their welding programs, what you do is you go into the oil field as, a hand, a ditch digger, a ditch hand, and you do that job. Talk with the welders, get to know the welders, ask if you can come in on like a day off and just ride with them and be their gopher. They'll teach you things here and there, and you'll begin to pick it up, and then you can slowly work your way in to being a welding assistant, learn the trade, and then you have more knowledge in 6 months than a person who's paying thousands of dollars to go to a school for 2 years. That's what I did. Like, I learned welding from my father. I expanded on that knowledge in the military. And then I expanded on it tenfold by working in the oil fields and in construction. That's how I learned. It's crazy to know that there are people out there right now welding for thousands of dollars, but they're wasting hundreds of dollars because that little nugget of information was left out of their schooling. Schooling doesn't make you better at anything. It just teaches you how to think like everyone else. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. Filler rod. I mean, yeah, if you're stick welding, if you're MIG welding, TIG welding, anything like that, you can lay down a second rod, or 2 rods, or 3 rods, or 4 rods. You can lay them down to bridge that gap. Yeah, you could use a spoon, get the spoon in there, and then start the bead across the gap, and then pull the spoon out, and then just work off that gap in that little bridge. You just kind of do it that way. But it's more time consuming, and your weld has no real backing strength. The weld itself is strong, 70, 80,000 psi. But with a backer rod, you're talking, 120,000 psi, because it has something to grab onto. It has something that is more. There's more steel there. And it's just something that I learned. And I mean, you're talking keeping maybe $60 worth of steel on your truck that takes up as much weight as a 12-pack. I mean, it's a no-brainer. You keep that extra stuff in there, and then you don't have to cut out and waste hundreds of dollars on other things. Like, you could build an entire railing system and then come up, an inch short at one end, and be like, I forgot to account for the wall brick being uneven. One brick's out, the other brick's in, and that screwed me all up. So now I have to cut off this entire top rail, cut out a new rail, put that rail on the top, weld everything back up, and then get the end fixed. Or half-inch backfill rod, nice little flat rod, put it up there, weld it in place, and then grind it flush. It looks great, it matches up perfectly, and it's a stronger material. That's just how that is. It. I mean, save yourself time, save yourself money, save yourself the headache, and just get that extra little bit of steel. You keep it on hand. You can cut off, a foot length if you need it. I mean, hell, you've got rods. You've got rods in a bucket, and you could take the rods and spend 5 minutes hammering off all the flux and all the shit off the rods. You could do that, but then you're wasting a rod. You're burning a rod just to save a rod, and it makes no sense. Get yourself some of them rods. You run away with it, and you're good. You can pick a thicker rod. If your welder can only handle 1/8 inch or 1/4 inch rods, you can still use inch rod, 1/2 inch rod as a backfill, and it works way better. So that's something to keep in mind for the newer generation of welders out there. Pick yourself up some, put them on the truck. Even if you're buying foot long rods, you're still saving a boatload, and you can keep them in your freaking drop bucket just in case. Oh, I need to fill this gap here. Okay, pull one out, and away you go. That's a healthy piece of knowledge. Didn't cost you nothing. So have a good one.